Joining me now is law professor Barbara Cox, Vice Dean at California Western School of Law and Chair of the Board of Directors Executive Committee of the National Freedom to Marry organization. And Barbara, what's your reaction to this 5-4 decision giving same-sex couples the right to marry? Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, but I couldn't stop crying for about an hour. It's just, it was a tremendous opinion. Justice Kennedy encapsulated all the important points. And, you know, it's been a very long time. I've been working on this for 32 years, so it's a wonderful win.
Remind us of the case that landed this in the Supreme Court.
Well, it's couples from Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee had all sued to be given the freedom to marry because their states had banned them from doing so, or they had marriages from other states and their states wouldn't recognize them. And so the Sixth Circuit was the first and only court of appeal that actually upheld the bans, and then this was the Supreme Court appeal from that decision.
Now today the Supreme Court, of course, said the right to marry is fundamental. That's a quote from them. What is the legal basis for that right to marry decision?
Well, they based it primarily on the due process section of the 14th Amendment. And it was such a tremendous result because most states have been looking at it from an equal protection standpoint. It's not fair to treat same-sex and opposite-sex couples differently, but the Supreme Court really focused on the fundamental right to marry, that everyone has a fundamental right to marry and that same-sex couples have that same right.
Now, in his dissent, Chief Justice John Roberts said, "This court is not a legislature." What is his argument against that, using that language?
What he's saying is that changes like this should happen either through the legislature or through the voters. But you know, the problem is that in 1967, the Supreme Court struck down the interracial marriage bans across the country. It wasn't until 2001 that the voters of Alabama removed that unconstitutional provision from their state constitution. And so the idea that you would have this kind of significant change done through the ballot box or through the legislature is just impossible.
It takes a long time for sure. Let me ask you this, though. This ruling, same-sex couples, what does it mean for San Diego and across the country, people who are married or want to get married that are same-sex? Well,
I think you know, they're now, we've seen the pictures of people who have the first couple to marry in Kentucky, the first couple to marry in Mississippi. But for people like me who have been married since 2003 and live in California, the real change is that my family lives in Kentucky, which was one of the 4 states. And every time I went home, my marriage was subject to being not recognized. And so now any same-sex couple who's married can travel across the country and not be worried that their marriage won't come with them.
So you could move and still get the same consideration as far as tax credits or things like that.
Exactly.
Based on that, I see. Do you think this legal fight about same-sex marriage will continue, or do you think this is pretty much a solid end to it?
I can't see where else it could go. When the Supreme Court has spoken, they are the supreme law of the land, and so I can't really see that there's any place to go with this. And hopefully the people who oppose marriage today will think back in the future like the people who opposed interracial marriage bans in the 60s and realize that that was not the appropriate thing for the United States.
When does this ruling go into effect? I know it's already in effect in California.
And it's immediate. We're seeing that because of the marriage licenses being issued. I was actually surprised that some of the states acted so quickly. But for the 13 states where you still could not get married, they've already started issuing marriage licenses.
All right, anything else you want to say about this? Like you said, a long, hard battle, 32 years.
It really, the thing that was so striking was Justice Kennedy's opinion was so articulate and pointing out that same-sex couples respect marriage. It's not about disrespect for marriage, it's about the importance of marriage, and that there is now a national answer to this question that we've been talking about for 30 years is really valuable.
All right, Barbara Cox, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.